Hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Star of Zion When Freedom Speaks Health Edition. We do health topics every now and then, and this month is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. We are going to talk today with some professionals from the Alzheimer's Association, the North Carolina chapter, but I'm sure there's a chapter near you, so all you have to do is go to alzheimers.org to find out more about how you can get connected to your chapter. Let's dive right into this and talk about this topic that we all need to know a little bit more about to make sure that we're right where we need to be as far as information is concerned. We have for today a great bridge to this whole thing. Somebody that's been working with the Alzheimer's Association for a few years now, and her name is Michelle Mills. Now, Michelle Mills is coming to us from North Carolina, and she attends the Vestibule AME Zion Church, and that's in Kings Mountain, North Carolina. She joined that church in 2017 as a lifelong Gastonia resident. So without further ado, we're going to bring Michelle on. How are you doing today, Michelle?
I am fantastic. Thank you, Darren. Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And listen, I'm going to step out the way. I'm really going to be looking and observing and trying to learn as much information as I can about this important topic. So thank you for joining us today. And you will introduce our presenter on today, and then we'll get that great information from her.
I will. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Take it away.
Okay, so today we are discussing Alzheimer's. It's a very important subject, especially for our demographic, for African Americans. And today we have Miss Juanita Wade. She asked me to call her Nita, so I will call her Nita. So I would say public service is her passion. It is a mainstay for her. She volunteers as an Alzheimer's community educator, and she is a support group facilitator for the Alzheimer's Association of Western Carolina. This work follows her public service in Boston and in DC. As an elected public official, she worked on voter rights, voter registration. She was an advocate for human rights. She has a rich work history. She's an educator. She's a nonprofit executive manager. She was on the cabinet for the late Mayor Thomas Menino. She was a nonprofit education manager. So to put it in a nutshell, she is a very accomplished servant leader and advocate. So let's welcome Ms. Juanita Brooks Wade. Let's bring her in. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi. I'm so glad I could join you this evening.
Oh, same here. So let's go ahead and tell our people. And so while Juanita is making her presentation, go ahead and put those questions and comments in the chat, and I will read and do as many as possible. Okay, go ahead and put those in the chat. And Juanita, take it away.
Now, we actually have the PowerPoint presentation. So I ask if you could pop that on the screen. Oh, here we go. So I'm a volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association, as mentioned, and tonight we're going to talk about understanding Alzheimer's and dementia. You know, it's interesting that people talk about Alzheimer's and talk about dementia. It's important to understand the difference. And so next slide. I really want you to understand the Alzheimer's Association and our mission. The Alzheimer's Association leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. I think it's important. Several pieces of this are really critical. Accelerating global research. You know, Alzheimer's Association is one of the largest funders for global research on trying to find a cure for this very difficult disease. And through education and support of communities, driving education around reducing the risk. We all want to know, how can we avoid getting this difficult disease? So let's go to the next slide. The vision, a world without Alzheimer's and all other dementia. Remember, not just Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is one kind of dementia, but there's lots of other dementia we're trying to find a cure for. Next. So tonight we're going to talk about understanding Alzheimer's and dementia. We're going to talk a little bit about the impact, the definitions, how do you understand Alzheimer's and dementia, Alzheimer's in the brain, what are some of the risk factors, the stages of the disease, some of the FDA-approved treatments, talk a little bit about the warning signs, what healthy living looks like and how to reduce risk. We're going to talk about the resources that the Alzheimer's Association provides for so many people across the country and around the world. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you join the fight to find a cure. Next. So let's talk about the impact. You know, the impact of this disease is astounding. It affects caregivers at home and at work. 70% of individuals with the disease live at home with caregiver. I want to repeat that. 70% of individuals with the disease live at home with a caregiver. That means the person across the street from you may in fact be being cared for by a caregiver. The people down the street on your left, down the street on your right, our community is where we will find people who are struggling with this journey and living with caregivers who spend inordinate amount of time unpaid. Caregivers provide 80% of the care for those with this disease, unpaid and often untrained. Over half of employed caregivers report arriving to work late, having to leave work early, or having to quit altogether. These are some of the behaviors I exhibited when I was caring for my mom. You will see this disease takes personal, financial, and community toll on folks. Next, please. So what is dementia? What is Alzheimer's? What happens in the brain? And what are the risk factors? Dementia is a term for symptoms related to change in memory, reasoning, thinking, and function. So this is what we call dementia. Now, Alzheimer's is one kind of dementia. So there are several different kinds, like people who have Parkinson's, people who have frontotemporal lobe dementia. So dementia is like an umbrella of which there are many underneath it. It is not reversible. It is irreversible. Remember that. So if we're talking about someone is showing progress in this disease, is no way to turn it back. I'd say Alzheimer's accounts for about 60 to 80% of people who end up with dementia. The disease is, we actually call dementia a condition of the brain, of which Alzheimer's is one. Let's talk about the risk. What are the risk factors? Well, the primary risk factor is age. So at 65, you see people are at higher risk, and people who are over 85 are in even higher situation of risk. There is genetics. There are some people who have high propensity in terms of their genetics to get the disease, family history, the way people live, their environmental factors, and their lifestyle. Remember, in our community, in the African American community, issues of environmental factors and lifestyle are so critical. What is the continuum look like? Well, in the beginning, people didn't realize it, but the disease is in the brain and in fact grows and affects the brain long before we see some of the symptoms. So asymptomatic, like COVID, people have the disease, but you didn't see symptoms. In the beginning of Alzheimer's, it's asymptomatic. People will in fact have some effect in their brain, but very little symptoms. Then we may see mild cardio, oh my heavens, I forgot the word. Anyway, in the beginning, some people may have mild cognitive loss due to Alzheimer's. Again, in the beginning. And then there are 3 stages we talk about. The mild stage, where people show exhibits of forgetfulness, repeating questions, forgetting to find the directions to places that they're used to going all the time, repeating themselves over and over again. In the moderate stage, we'll see people who have a little bit more difficulty. They'll begin to back out of social activities because they're unable to participate in conversations the way they used to. They're forgetting more. They need a lot more attention and help in terms of how they live their life, how they care for themselves. And in the third and severe stage, people oftentimes lose their mobility, their ability to speak altogether. And this is really when people need 24 hours of care. And you see the final stages of their life. What are the treatments? Well, the treatment started, I guess, in 1996 to the present. We've been seeing scientists, researchers battle the issue to try to find treatments that can help find a cure. Unfortunately, there is no cure today. That doesn't mean there won't be one. But right now, most of the prescriptions and medicines that people are prescribed can help with symptoms. If someone has difficulty with anxiety, fear, paranoia, there are some medicines that people can in fact be prescribed that deal with those symptoms. Again, does not stop the disease from progressing, does not slow it down at all, but it does in fact help with some level of the symptoms. And there is a new prescription that people talk about now, aducanumab, and it is only for people who are in the very, very early stages of the disease. It's still being tested, and so it's important that we know about it. Let's move on to the next phase. So there's a list of warning signs I think are important for our community to know about. There are 10 warning signs, and I tell folks all the time, it's not one of these signs we're looking for, or even 3 of them. We say that if you see these signs, these behaviors in someone you love, if you see these behaviors in yourself, or even in the person who's sitting next to you in church, I want you to pay attention, because if you see these signs and they increase in both intensity and frequency, then that's someone who should go and see their medical personnel. The first one I want to talk about is memory that disrupts daily life. Again, not like you dropped your keys on the table and you went to the kitchen and you said, "No, where are my keys?" And you walk back to the table and there they are. That's normal. Forgetting where something is for a short period of time and then remembering, that's normal with aging. But we're talking about memory that disrupts daily life. When you drive your car somewhere and you get there and you don't know why you got there or how you got there. The second, challenges in planning or solving problems. Oftentimes people who are in the beginning stages of Alzheimer's have trouble with their checkbook. Now, not the normal trouble with the checkbook that we all have, but trouble with solving problems, simple addition, simple mathematics, can't plan ahead. Another one is difficulty completing familiar tasks. How many of us make a cake and can throw the ingredients in the bowl and whip them up quickly? Well, if you're in the early stages of Alzheimer's, you may have difficulty remembering what are the ingredients in that cake you used to make all the time, and what do you do when you have a whole bunch of ingredients on the table and don't remember why you put them there. People have confusion with time or place, and you may often see people with the disease dressing inappropriately. They'll put a heavy coat and sweater and hat on in the month of August when they leave the house, because they don't understand that it's summertime and that kind of dress is not necessary. Or they'll go someplace that's been familiar to them, but they don't remember where they are now. Another one is trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. It is very common that people who have Alzheimer's have fender benders because they're unable to see that distance between that car in front of them, or they're driving at a faster speed than they think they are. And so they end up having trouble driving. Or even stepping downstairs, their visual, their ability to understand how far is the next step. So there may be some falls that they experience. Next, new problems with words in speaking or writing. Some people begin to write words that don't make sense anymore, or call items that are, the word comes to them all the time by another name. Misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace. When I talked about those keys, you come in the house from the garage, you drop your car keys down, and then you go in the kitchen, you come right back, and there they are. But some people go in the kitchen and say, oh, I got to get something out of the car, can never remember where they put the keys, and can't retrace their steps the way they normally could. Decreased or poor judgment. Again, making decisions that are inappropriate, listening to sales pitches about something that they should purchase, and then all of a sudden they're buying things that they don't need or are inappropriate. Withdrawal from work or social activities. This is very common when people understand that their words are different or they can't understand conversations. They start deciding not to attend the book club that they were in, or social activities that they were very busy in. And the last is changes in mood and personality. It is very common that people become angry or paranoid or anxious. And so mood changes are very common in folks who have Alzheimer's. So again, these are 10 warning signs. If you happen to see one, it may not mean much, but if you see one that the number of these warning signs are showing and the intensity is showing, then that's someone who needs to go and see medical staff and see how it should be diagnosed. Now, these 10 warning signs don't always predict that someone has the disease, but if you're seeing these warning signs, that it's necessary to get a diagnosis. Let's go to the next one. Healthy living for your brain and body. Well, the most important thing you can do to minimize the risks for Alzheimer's or other kinds of dementia is to keep your brain and your body healthy. You want to do that by dieting, eating the right foods, minimizing your use of alcohol, no smoking, keeping your body healthy by eating the right foods, minimizing obesity. If you are heavy, thinking about ways how you can reduce your weight, less strain on your heart, and the less strain on your heart means your blood flows better, both through the heart and up to the brain. Second is physical activity. Find something that you enjoy doing that helps to raise your heart rate up. I hate to jog, but I found that I love water aerobics. And so with water aerobics, I can work at keeping my heart active, keeping my weight down. So find something that you could do with a partner, with a friend. I hate to exercise alone, so I don't. I do it with others. But physical activity is very, very important. Cognitive stimulation. There are lots of folks who do not read much, do not do puzzles, do not engage their mind. So studying something new. If you know how to knit, but don't know how to crochet, change it up. Try to learn how to crochet. Learn a new language. Go back to school. Go to community college and learn a new skill. But cognitive stimulation is very important. What do they say? If you don't use the muscle, it will atrophy. Well, if you don't use your brain, it will not stay vital. So cognitive stimulation is very, very important. And the last box is social engagement. So many members of our community over 65 live alone. And living alone means there's very little social engagement. Well, social engagement and isolation are also not healthy activities. So I encourage you to think about social activity. Think about what you could do with your friends. Even if you can't visit a friend, but you're both watching the same television program, call your friend up and talk about that television program that you saw. If your grandmother lives in another state, call her at least weekly and talk with her. Engage her in conversation. Keep her mind active. And all of these activities can be done through social engagement. Spending time thinking about diet and nutrition. How are you feeding your family? How are you going out to dinner with friends? Physical activities. Engage in exercise that is fun, that you could do with with your friends. Cognitive stimulation. Again, going to the movies together, joining a book club, doing Sudoku, games that you could play that, again, tax your mind, keep your mind active. But all this can be done with friends and family so that you can minimize isolation. Let's go to the next slide. This is a recap. Dementia is a general term for a collection of symptoms. Alzheimer's is the most common cause. It's not a normal part of aging. As I said, there's some forgetfulness we get as we age, but some parts of forgetfulness are not normal. It's a progressive brain disease. It's affected by age, family history, and genetics, and they're all the risk factors. Environmental and lifestyle factors can be addressed, and healthy habits can reduce our risk of cognitive impairment. And that's important to understand. People say, well, what can I do? You can keep yourself healthy and live a lifestyle that in fact promotes good health. Latinos and African American and women are at greater risk, at higher risk. There are all sorts of reasons why. Symptoms worsen over time, but no two individuals experience and progress through Alzheimer's the same way. So when I talked about those 10 warning signs, again, it's not one or two. They may show up in some folks, one or two, 3 or 4 may not show up in others. The journey through Alzheimer's is not the same for everyone, but understanding the stages is important to gain a general understanding of the progression of the disease and to help caregivers prepare for what to expect and how to respond. Medications are available that treat the symptoms only. Only recently are medications in the pipeline that address the underlying biology of Alzheimer's disease. Everyone could help advance Alzheimer's research by participating in clinical trials. They have clinical trials for people with Alzheimer's, people without, people in families with high genetic impact. So go to alz.org to see if you're interested in a clinical trial. It's especially important that people of diverse races and ethnicities participate. Again, if everyone who is in the trial looks like you, then you have a better chance of finding new remedies for your illness. But if no one in the trial looks like you, then it's not likely that your community will get the best options in terms of remedies. No one has to face or should face this disease alone. And so the Alzheimer's Association is available for help. Let's go to the next slide. What are the resources? Well, by phone, there's a 24/7 helpline, 1-800-272-3900. I tell people wear the bracelet with this phone number, write it on your palm. If you are a caregiver, this is a critical number. Anytime you're in trouble, you're trying to figure out how to respond to a need that your loved one has, that number is great to call. You can go on .org. I think Darren said in the beginning, it'd be great. You go to alz.org and learn about the Alzheimer's office that is closest to you and how you might be able to volunteer. In communities where worldwide or nationwide, there's alz.crf for education, virtual and in person, and for support groups. Again, you can go to alz.org and get lots of information about how you can work with and get the best education related to Alzheimer's support. Join the fight. Volunteer. You can join and work with us around advocacy. You can find out where you can, join a clinical trial. So folks like us, we could help find cures. Walk to End Alzheimer's this fall. Every fall, there's a Walk to End Alzheimer's. Would love to have you join us. And the longest day, June 21st. June 21st is the longest day of the year. And there are lots of activities we have to do fundraising and bring awareness to the issue and celebrate the longest day events. So with that, I'm going to go back to Michelle. Michelle and I are going to find out what interests you, what questions you have, so that we can keep this conversation going.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Juanita. That is great information, but I do have a few questions of my own. So you did mention, and we do know that African Americans are 2 times more at risk as compared to our white brothers and sisters. So can you share your own experience of any moments that you had being a caregiver for your mother? Do you mind sharing that with
Not
us?
at all, not at all. It's interesting. It was such a long time ago, and my mom died in 1999, but she in fact had the disease for over 20 years.
Wow.
So we first started seeing signs, we did not know what it was. There wasn't an Alzheimer's Association that was active back then that we could call up, but we did start to notice she was having fender benders. She was living alone, and we would go over, Mom, did you eat dinner? And she'd say, yes, but we'd notice nothing was in the refrigerator or nothing had been cooked. We would buy food for her, and it would sit in her freezer and not get used. So we started to notice, here it is, healthy behavior was no longer happening. She was really good about watching her finances, but then she started getting bills saying she wasn't paying. So we had to move her in with family, and she moved in with my husband and my family. And so we were caregivers until she passed. It's a very important role. Not everyone can be a caregiver. Not everyone is ready to take on that responsibility, but understanding the disease, understanding what to expect in the stages and how to respond to the needs is really, really important.
Definitely. So I was actually a caregiver for several Alzheimer's patients myself, and they ranged in age. But I just wanted you to speak to the risk of those who are under 65, because I do know that the average Alzheimer's patient is 65 and over, but there are those who have the early onset. How prevalent is that particular early onset?
Well, it's interesting. And we have, sometimes people call it early onset. I kind of stay away from the early because people think of the early stage. Trying to focus on younger onset. A small population of people who get the disease in very early stage, in the early 40s, some in the late 30s, but in the 40s and 50s, which is very early, get Alzheimer's. And it's a very difficult time. It's primarily genetic when people get it that young. And what you see is the behaviors that I talked about, the 10 warning signs, you begin to see those in people who are quite young. Now, what's the challenge between someone getting it 40 and someone getting the disease at 70? Well, if someone is 40, it is likely that they're still working. It is
Mm-hmm.
likely that they may be still taking care of young children, a
Mm-hmm.
spouse. They may,
Mm-hmm.
in fact, be taking care of young children themselves, a
Yep.
spouse, and a parent.
Yep.
And so
Mm-hmm.
when you are faced with this disease at a very young age, it may mean that you can no longer go to work. And so here it impacts your income coming into the family.
Mm-hmm.
It also means you don't have access to like Social Security,
Yeah.
which isn't available until you're 62. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
40 and you
Mm-hmm.
now no longer have access to a paycheck, how do you support your family? So the
Mm-hmm.
challenges for people who get younger onset Alzheimer's very, very critical. And
Mm-hmm.
so it requires very folks to be very sensitive and very supportive. And
Mm-hmm.
it's important that companies and employment offices and understand who works for them and how to
Mm-hmm.
help someone and support someone who is diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge for people again, for younger onset is oftentimes they're not diagnosed early enough. And
Right.
they sometimes go 5, 6, 7 years before they get a diagnosis because the doctor says, well, you're forgetful, but that's not a big deal. Or maybe it's stress at work, or
Yeah.
maybe it's difficult home situation. And they don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily look at what the real issues are related to someone's
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis.
So Corey had put in our chat that younger onset is this is the group of individuals under 65 who get Alzheimer's. And about 200,000 Americans have early onset Alzheimer's.
Yeah, big
That's pretty
numbers.
staggering, in my
Yes, it
opinion.
is.
That's pretty
Yes,
staggering.
it is.
It's pretty
Mhm.
staggering. Pretty staggering.
And
So
it's
that's
quite
very,
scary. It's
hmm
quite scary.
very scary. Very scary. Okay, so and then one more another question I wanted to ask you too. Now, is the disease fatal, and can you describe what the last days or last months of an Alzheimer's patient
Mhm.
what they experience?
You know, it's interesting. I sometimes have spoken to high school students, and that's one of the first questions they ask me:
Hmm.
is this going to kill me, or will this kill someone? And I say to them, stop and think. Your brain is the driver for what you do. It drives how you breathe. It drives how your heart pumps. You know how you move your arms, how your
Hmm.
stomach operates. Your
Yeah,
brain is a vital part to determining how your body takes care of itself.
right.
But with
Hmm.
Alzheimer's, you begin to lose access to pieces of your brain.
Right.
As those parts of your brain lose blood, begin to atrophy, that part of your brain doesn't work much anymore.
Hmm.
So you can tell when people begin to lose their memory, that part of the brain is the part that's beginning to shut down, that's beginning to atrophy.
Hmm.
So as your brain begins to atrophy, you'll lose your ability to swallow, you
Hmm.
lose your ability to breathe, you lose
Wow.
your ability for your heart to beat.
Oh,
And
wow.
therefore,
Wow.
right.
It's sad. Just very
It
sad.
is, it is, it
It's
is.
sad. 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 It's very sad. So now, for lack of a better term, back in the day,
Mhm.
we used to call people senile.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So can you speak to that?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. Um, African American families have always lived with grandma and grandpa, lived near them. And we've watched our parents, our grandparents, and in some cases, our great grandparents age. And when grandma used to talk uh, and make no sense, we would just say, oh, she was senile. You know, grandma's just senile. Don't pay no attention to it. And
Hmm.
it's so interesting being educated to understand dementia and
Hmm.
particularly Alzheimer's really
Hmm.
helps us understand even what grandma, grandpa, and the greats were going through.
Yeah.
That's why I say to people all the time, you may not have someone in your family right now who has Alzheimer's, but it's absolutely important that you understand this disease and understand what those signs look like.
Hmm.
Because the earlier you get a diagnosis, the better that you could help your family or your loved one plan for their future.
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want their future to be dealt with by consequences that you could not control. So
Mm-hmm.
I say to folks, the word is not senile anymore. The word is dementia. And it is
Mm-hmm.
a disease that we need to understand, we need to educate ourselves about, and be prepared to take care of our loved ones who
Mm-hmm.
get the diagnosis.
So, what about how does discrimination in healthcare, how does it
Mm,
impact
mhm.
the Alzheimer's spectrum? How does it impact that?
There's several things I think that are important for us to understand. One is cultural competency. Oftentimes, when we go to the hospital or a clinic, we're not looking at doctors that look like us. We're not looking at nursing staff, medical staff, neurologists, psychologists, and others who look like us. And sometimes our diagnoses take a long time. They write off, sometimes our concerns are written off as not important, or we're not seeing the right kind of medical team that can help with the diagnosis. And so cultural competence or lack thereof is really critical for people of color who seek to get the right care. We saw this around COVID. We saw people going to the hospital and being sent home because they were told they were not sick enough. Well, there are times the Alzheimer's Association did part of their study and part of our 2021 annual report, and it
Mm-hmm.
showed that 50% of the African Americans and Latinos who were asked about discrimination in the medical community, 50% said absolutely. They were afraid they were not going to be cared for. They were afraid they were not going to get the right care. And
Mm-hmm.
so even now, members of the support group talk about the fact that um, they go to the doctor to get care for their mother or their loved one, and they don't see anyone who looks like them. And they're not sure they're getting the right care or um, getting the right diagnosis. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this is not an easy fix. This means we've got to get medical schools and other training
Mm-hmm.
institutions
Mm-hmm.
to
Yep.
step up,
Mm-hmm.
working with
Mm-hmm.
students of color so that there's a broad spectrum of people in the medical community who can work with us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And in your presentation, you mentioned something about clinical trials. Can you
Mhm.
speak to that?
Sure. Clinical trials are set up so that um, pharmaceutical companies and other medical teams can try different medications, try different methodologies, try different techniques to either slow down the disease, prevent, minimize the risk of the disease. So we encourage people of color to do the research, see if you're interested in these trials. Because, like I said, if no one like us ever gets to be a part of a trial, how will they try new techniques, new methodologies, or new medications on us if we're not there? We cannot expect that whatever new medicine they come up with will work for us if it's never tried on us.
Mm, true.
So being a part of a clinical trial is so, so important because there
Mm-hmm.
needs to be models of every culture, every race, every background coming in to
Mm-hmm.
um, to be tested.
Mm-hmm. So we have one comment in our chat. It says that my maternal grandmother had hardening of the arteries. Now I realize she demonstrated sundowning
Mhm.
along with other aggressive behaviors. And she says, I'm thankful for two single aunts who took care of her. Can you tell us what sundowning is?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I liken it back to, again, June 21st is the longest day of the year. Well, it's celebrated, one of the reasons, because sundowners is delayed. Sundown is a condition where people are affected by how much sunlight is shining. And it's not just folks who have dementia who get sundowners. I know several folks who have sundowners who are not, who do not have dementia. But sundowners is often a time when, or the condition where people get very aggressive, angry, don't respond to cajoling or other forms of support. But the sundowners is a very difficult period. Now, there are some medications that doctors provide to reduce some of the aggression that comes out, but sundown is generally around when the sun is setting and people are not seeing that sun, that they respond pretty aggressively to whatever's going on around them.
Okay, and earlier you had mentioned that there are medications. I think you and I had talked about those
Yes,
earlier.
yes.
There are medications that they take, but it's usually for those, that newest one, it's for those in the early stages. Can you talk about that one?
Well, and you can I say it wrong. I'm gonna not say it wrong. Canumab. Now that is that's not necessarily for sundowners, but it is a new medication that is being used again for folks who are very, very early stage.
Okay.
And it's not yet it's being supported by the FDA, but not yet widespread use.
Gotcha.
But some of the medicines that people use for sundowners, you may see advertised on television: Aricept, Seroquel. There are lots of medications that are advertised on TV that people, in fact, talk to their doctors about, and whether it's best to have it prescribed to their loved one.
Okay, gotcha. All righty, so let's see if I have any more comments here in the chat. Now, earlier, there were a lot of people saying that they had friends who were, or family who were affected by that. So how can we support our family and friends who are affected by Alzheimer's? How can we support them?
Well, one of the, as I said, education is really key. I encourage faith organizations, schools, social groups, spend time learning about dementia and Alzheimer's. You'd be surprised how many people around you are affected by this and can use the support. The other is I encourage families to join support groups. Support groups are a place where caregivers and people who are going through the journey can get together and talk about the issues that they face going through this journey. They learn new ways to solve problems. They learn about medications. They learn about strategies they've learned in terms of making their home safe for their loved one. Support groups are absolutely critical. People who are caregivers, it's a very difficult job. If you never get to talk to anybody who's also going through it, you end up feeling pretty lonely and feeling that you have no answers for some of the problems you're facing. So I encourage people, one, to get educated about the disease, know as much as you can about it, keep the list of the 10 warning signs close to you. So if you see someone in your church, in your social group, who's in your class, who's a neighbor, who's showing some of those signs, then you get to talk with one of their family members about what you've witnessed.
Okay.
And the other is joining support groups. I say the third is to volunteer, support, join, fundraise, do anything you can to support the Alzheimer's Association. They're one of the largest organizations supporting families and community, and again, research worldwide, so that we have the best care in finding cure for this problem.
Absolutely. So, and also another question I had, now, who cares for them the most? Is it family or professionals? Is it mostly family?
Well, like I said, between about 70% of the people who are living with Alzheimer's are living at home in our communities. So 9 times out of 10, it is family who has to leave work or take time off to care for their loved one. But there are also families who have to purchase services from care providers, because again, if you've got to go to work to bring an income into that household, you can't stay home. And the cost, again, is very, very burdensome. It's expensive, and there's very little support. So those 70% of the folks who are in our community, 9 times out of 10, they're being cared for by their loving families.
Yeah. So Miss Cynthia says, "Family girls."
Yes, it's family.
Yeah, she said family.
And that's why family needs to write that number down. 272-33-3900. They gotta write that number down, because
she's wrote the one word, family.
Family. That's right. That's right.
So now, what can I, as a woman, do to help myself?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Because
again, reducing the risk.
Since we are so much more at risk than
that's right.
men.
That's right. Well, go back to those 4 things I talked about. Diet and nutrition. Again, eat healthy. You know, and eating healthy is good anyway. You know, you may be trying to reduce risk for Alzheimer's, but eating healthy is good anyway.
Yeah,
so
it is.
You want to reduce obesity. You want to make sure that you are minimizing how much alcohol you use. You want to make sure that you are not smoking. You want to make sure that you are not ingesting a lot of sugar and salts or saturated fats. You got to give up that fried chicken. Now, it doesn't mean you never eat fried chicken. It doesn't mean you never eat fried chicken. It just doesn't mean you eat it every day. Okay? The second thing you want to do is make sure that you are involved in some exercise. Now, I don't mean, I mean exercise that's going to increase your blood flow. Make sure that you are pumping that heart. More that heart pumps, the faster that pumps, the faster that blood is sent up to the brain. So exercise is very important. Staying active. And let me tell you, don't do something that someone wrote down is good for you. Do something that you're going to enjoy. Because if you don't enjoy it, you won't keep it up.
Right.
You won't keep it up.
So true.
Third, make sure you're using that mind. Use it. And by using it, learn something new. Read books. Study something. Learn a new skill. You've got to use something that causes you to think and have to use your brain. If you spend all day doing nothing that pushes the brain, I'm telling you, so you got a muscle, you don't use it, it atrophies. So use the brain. So cognitive stimulation is very, very important. And the fourth one is social engagement. Spend time with friends and family. And all of those activities, those 3 activities, diet, nutrition, exercise, and cognitive stimulation, can be done with friends. So if you're doing with friends and family, you're doing the social engagement. Remember, if you got a friend who used to come to book club all the time, then you don't see them as often. Ask the question, are they having difficulty remembering things? Are they no longer able to keep up with the book? Are they showing some of the warning signs of Alzheimer's? And that may be why they no longer come.
So Cynthia says again, not only family, she says that we have a support group here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So glad to have them from Grand Rapids, Michigan. And Corey also says to engage across all this area, move, eat healthy, pray, sing, and dance.
Absolutely.
Do all of that. So just one last question for you. I don't know if you know anything about this. This is kind of a clinical side. When we gave our presentation at the Lincoln District Conference, Corey had mentioned something about genes. Do you know anything about those genes? Okay.
I don't know a lot about it. I do know, as I mentioned, that early onset is oftentimes determined by genetics.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I think a small percentage of Alzheimer's is driven by genetics, smaller
Yeah.
than people would think.
Mm-hmm.
It's more often, again, age, family history,
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle, environment, lifestyle, whether you're a man or a woman. Unfortunately, as they said, we have a higher percentage that has to be studied.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, important for trial, clinical trial. Why do women have higher percentages of the disease
Mm-hmm.
than men? I know we deal with stress differently than our male counterparts, but
Mm-hmm.
um, that's why clinical trials are important, because we do need to find out why women get Alzheimer's more than men.
Definitely. So, Juanita, thank you so much. But can you give us some final thoughts before we turn it back over to Darren?
I think I just want to repeat again, this disease is prevalent in our community, and so the more we understand it, I think the better service we'll provide to each other and support each other in the community. So learn about it, educate yourself about Alzheimer's dementia. Support the caregivers in your community. They are everywhere. If you talk about the issue of Alzheimer's, I'm sure some people will say, well, you know, I'm a caregiver and I do this or I do that. So support the folks in the community who are caregivers. And please consider working for, volunteering, and fundraising for Alzheimer's Association.
Absolutely.
It's a
Absolutely.
fantastic organization.
Absolutely. Find your local walk.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Find your local walk.
Find your local walk. So, Darren, here you go. It's you.
Listen, that was perfect on so many levels. I am so grateful for you all coming on and giving us the information that we needed to hear. We need to have more live videos just like this, where we're bringing it straight from the professional's mouth to our ears, and we act upon it once we hear about it. So thank you so much, Mrs. Michelle Mills and Mrs. Juanita Wade. You were absolutely tremendous on tonight. I learned so much, and I know that there's going to be more partnerships that are going to go on between the Amy Zion Church and the Star of Zion moving forward. So listen, I'm speaking to the live audience that's out there right now. This is only the beginning. We're introducing this group of professionals to you right now, but we want you to engage them yourselves. Now, there's been a silent partner in the background, Miss Corey O'Donoghue, and she's been in the chat and doing amazing work as well. She's a program director and she works in the North Carolina chapter, but she also has connections to the Alzheimer's Association worldwide. So we want you, and I think I have a chat, a banner here for her. We want you to connect with her. That's her email address that's on the screen right there. If you want information, if you want to have these professionals like the ones that are here on tonight, or other professionals in different areas, to be connected to them, to come out to your churches, to come out to your events that are going on, to be in your health fairs, anything that's going on in the near future, please contact her. That's what she's here for. This is the relationship that we are building across Zion, and we know that this information is what you need. So that's why we're bringing it to you. So please take advantage of the email address that's on your screen. Reach out to her. Reach out to all the professionals in the alz.org. I said Alzheimer's.org earlier. Disregard that, alz.org. That's how you get connected, and really start to do the impactful work that's needed for our demographic. Thank you again so much, y'all. This has been perfect. Y'all gonna be back for another recap at some point, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Love to. Absolutely.
All right, take care, y'all. Let me see here. All right, just a little bit more information about some upcoming events that are going on. One has to do actually with the Alzheimer's Association. Now, there's this play. I just learned about it right before I got on, right? So it's called The Unforgettable Play, and it's an amazing partnership between the Alzheimer's Association and the G. Davis production. Okay, so they take a deep dive in it from an African-American family experience, so their perspective, and it goes into dementia, and it goes into Alzheimer's and things of that nature. So if you go to the Unforgettable Play I think I have a little ticker here for that as well. Okay, there you go. Unforgettableplay.com. You can register, and I thought you had to pay for it. It's free. So all you gotta do is just log on, register, and you can get loads of people to come out from your church and experience this in a play format. You already know they're coming from that perspective that speaks to our demographic. So we want you to take advantage of that. Unforgettableplay.com. Please take advantage of that today. All right. Now, as far as Star of Zion is concerned, this is, we're doing this every month, and we will be tackling more health topics. We do one a month for that. We also do one feature of our bishops. Every single month we have Bishop Yu F. Young, who is going to be on this month. He is going to come on a Sunday. Now, why will he be on a Sunday? We want to obviously honor the fact that he is overseas. So we're going to have his live much earlier than we typically have lives at 8 o'clock. We're going to do his around, I think, 2 o'clock on an upcoming Sunday. So look out for the graphic. I don't want to put everything in stone just yet, but you will see a graphic that's coming out with that information, and you'll be able to definitely link into that. So look forward to that. We also are going to be talking to Chief Operating Officer up on a new series that we just had our inaugural series, inaugural live video with Dr. Sadler and Bishop Brown. It's called Now and Then. And Now and Then is going to be just an understanding of the vision and the history of all of our departments throughout the AME Zion Church. So our Chief Operating Officer, who operates in headquarters and then takes care of our publishing house, he's going to come on with our immediate past Chief Operating Officer and Brother Herb Watkins. So Mr. Herb Watkins. So they're going to have a discussion one-on-one, and you'll learn about the history of the publishing house and also the vision as to where they're going in the future. So look forward to that flyer, which should be coming out probably even tomorrow. And then you can mark your calendars for that as well. Well, that's all I have for you on tonight. Again, my name is Darren Ken. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Chief Communications Officer of the AME Zion Church and the Editor-in-Chief of the Star of Zion. Thank you for joining us for this When Freedom Speaks Health Edition about Alzheimer's awareness. Have a blessed night and take care.